where we get so caught up in the day-to-day, just keeping your head down and how we can survive. We float by each other like ghosts every day, ignorant to the struggle, the fight with one another, complacent with the fact that our systems are broken, with the fact that the top 10 will always be first in line, the fact that we are killing our planet and allowing them to keep us divided. We must stand together and rise up. It's time we wake up, and that is a difficult truth.
Welcome to the Thursday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Thursday morning. It is indeed Friday Junior. How's it going there? Are you vaccinated? I know Bezos quit Amazon. Does he run Twitch? No, he does not run Twitch. Howdy. We got a few. We've got a few headlines to go through today. We've got COVID in Texas, Florida. Oh boy. Hey, spread it forward. I think that this is the real climate emergency right here. This is the real climate emergency right here. And cocoa beans too. I think we found the selling point for boomers to realize climate change. I guess we'll have to switch to meth. Oh man. Wait, can I? Yeah, I don't know. If this doesn't spur any movement to save the planet, I don't know what will. All right, folks. I've tried so many times to quit caffeine and I can't do it. Yeah, it takes a it takes a lot of will to slowly get yourself off caffeine. I mean, I used to unironically drink a lot of energy drinks and soda. It was really bad. I used to drink like energy drinks and all that other really bad stuff for you. Yeah. Now I've managed to cut it down substantially. So there's that. Even months without it and I'm still tired. I have like 2 cups maybe, and that's just normal for me.
A lot of us rely on a morning cup of coffee, or several morning cups of coffee to get us going.
True.
The taste and quality of that coffee might not stay the same forever. Climate change has the potential to not only shift where and how we grow coffee in the future, but affect whether it can be grown at all. Whether you're a coffee aficionado who obsesses over acidity, aroma, and brew method, or you hastily chug some corner store instant blend on the go, climate change means bad news for your beans. There are lots of different blends and styles of coffee, but we usually just drink 2 types. The most famous is Coffea arabica. The other is its less celebrated cousin Coffea canephora, also known as Robusta. Most of us sip arabica for our daily
No,
cup of
I'm
joe,
not
but
sure.
if you get your fix from instant coffee, it's probably Robusta, which is not considered quite as tasty. The arabica coffee plant is pretty particular. It grows best in wet and cool mountain regions. Unfortunately for arabica and for us, climate change is bringing a slew of problems to those higher altitude coffee growing areas. That's especially true in places where arabica coffee grows wild, in the humid, shady mountain forests of Ethiopia and South Sudan. The genetic diversity found in these wild plants might hold the key to making coffee more resilient to climate and disease in the future. But climate change is increasing temperatures and shortening wet seasons in these areas. That makes the outlook not so good for wild coffee forests.
That's
By
so sad.
2088, we could see a 50 to 80% drop in arabica populations, which could be enough to land them on the endangered
Jesus
list. Combine
Christ.
that with deforestation, and this special species of bean could be at greater risk of extinction. While Robusta is definitely more, well, robust when it comes to environmental changes, climate change is shrinking its available growing range too. And as temperatures rise, both species are being hit harder by pests like the coffee berry borer. This species of bark beetle is a serious enemy of coffee plants. It used to attack only plants growing below certain elevations. That minimized its impact since coffee is grown at high altitudes. But with hotter weather, this beetle is expanding its range into higher ground and appearing in coffee plantations. Warmer weather is also encouraging a number of fungus species to
Yep.
move into arabica and robusta territory. One of the most notorious is coffee rust, which turns the leaves a rusty orange. When coffee rust arrived in Sri Lanka in the 19th century, it wiped out the entire industry in 10 years. Coffee rust
Jesus Christ. Nathan Dara. Yeah, so if you are serious about your coffee, climate change needs to be addressed.
also followed the coffee industry to Central and South America, where higher heat and humidity due to climate change made plantations vulnerable to infections. In a short time, the fungus caused billions of dollars in damage and lost profits. And because climate change is shrinking coffee growing habitat, there are fewer places left for coffee growers to flee this fungus and other diseases. Even if we can keep farming Arabica in the future, lower quality growing environments might negatively impact flavor, literally leaving a bitter taste in your mouth. The amount of shade and differences in microclimates change the look, smell, and taste of coffee beans. The best specialty coffee comes from natural, shady coffee-producing forests, since Arabica grown under a high sun exposure takes a hit in terms of bean quality. Also, in healthy coffee-producing forests, higher diversity in insect and orchid species appears to play a role in coffee quality. In fact, coffee connoisseurs can differentiate between coffees grown in different elevations and conditions, sort of like how some sommeliers can taste variations in wine. And the bad news for beans isn't just a downer for coffee snobs. Climate change is expected to make a dent all across this multi-billion-dollar sector and on the 100 million coffee farmers around the world. But there is some hope. Researchers are looking into other coffee species that might be more resilient than Arabica and Robusta. In fact, there are 124 known wild coffee species growing across the world, from tropical Africa to Australasia, and many are already used locally to make a morning cup of joe. One especially promising species is Coffea stenophila. This bean tastes similar to Arabica, and it can be grown at higher temperatures. Stenophila and a number of other wild species have important characteristics related to heat, drought, pest, and disease tolerance. Unfortunately, 60% of all wild coffee species could also be at risk of extinction. That's mainly because we're destroying the forests where they are found to make room for agriculture, livestock farming, and new settlements. In addition, some wild species are found in high conflict regions, which presents additional challenges. So even though many of us take for granted that coffee is a reliable part of our day, it may not be in the future. As if we needed another reason to get serious about climate change. Thanks for
Right.
watching this episode of SciShow,
True.
and thanks as always to our patrons for helping us make it happen. We cannot
True. This is great. New research in vertical coffee farms in the Rocky Mountains. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's possible. Is Hank a Boogaloo boy now? True. wait, true. We have the confirmation via the Hawaiian shirt, which is a very, very telling, which is a very iconic accessory to the Boogaloo Boys. Yeah, I think so. No. I mean, it's a nice shirt, but the boogs ruined it. Drew. I want a Pokemon Hawaiian shirt. That's what I want. I want a Pokemon Hawaiian shirt.
Open a pit of hell. You do not get a vaccine passport put on us. You know, as the population who's in control, you know that the people are the politicians. Once you get a power, you will never relinquish it. Do you think that the 4 feet of marble that holds you above high in this chamber will help you from the fate of humanity?
Jesus Christ.
Unleashing! No! Your children and your children's children will be subjugated! They will be asked, how many vaccines have you had? Have you been a good little Nazi? Open a pit of hell!
Oh man. I laugh because that's all I can offer. But there are ironic people like this who really think this way. I want ingenious Hawaiian shirts, union made. Nice. Well, those are the good Hawaiian shirts. The highlights of some of the effects of American education and disinformation. True. Oh man. Howdy, Draco Forever. DeSantis top donor invests in COVID drug governor promotes. Interesting. Morning. It's more embarrassing when you're anti-vax and not profiting off a COVID drug behind the scenes. Well, I don't know if he's politically, I guess he's profiting. Me thinks this is a conflict of interest. Florida Governor DeSantis, who has been criticized for opposing mask mandates and vaccine passports, is now touting a COVID-19 antibody treatment in which a top donor's company has invested millions of dollars. And I'm sure that this is just a random coincidence. I'm sure that it just happens to be. Right? I'm sure that this is just a random coincidence, I'm sure. Democracy Now! Has a good story on a good book, the Afghan Papers. Interesting. DeSantis has been flying around the state promoting a monoclonal antibody treatment sold by Regeneron, which was used on then-President Trump after he tested positive for COVID. The governor began talking about it as a treatment last year. So these folks are saying one of the main arguments that I keep hearing. One of the main arguments that I keep hearing is that, quote, I don't want to take the vaccine because I think that the vaccine is experimental, unquote. And what the fuck do you think this is? This... Regeneron therapy costs $1,250 a dose. Yikes. Like, these people are so... They complain or they feel like somebody's telling them that this is some type of experimental vaccine, which it isn't. There's decades of research behind this. But would take a experimental monoclonal antibody treatment instead of taking preventative measures. Anti-mask mandates make sense when your best interest is many people getting COVID as possible. True. Which then fuels the necessity for this treatment. Citadel, a Chicago-based hedge fund, has 15.9 million in shares of Regeneron Pharmaceutical, according to filings with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Citadel's CEO Ken Griffin has donated $10.75 million to a political committee that supports DeSantis, $5.7 million in 2018, and $5 million last year. It's about 10. It's not unusual for hedge funds to have a wide range of investments, and BlackRock, which has primarily donated to Democratic candidates, though has also donated substantially to Republicans, has a large holding in the company, more so than Citadel. DeSantis ramped up the call for Floridians to seek out monoclonal treatments in August as coronavirus cases spiked. He's held news conferences at treatment sites and at Tampa Hospital touting the effectiveness of the drug if people receive treatment soon after testing positive. So... wait. Hold on. Let me get this straight. So the folks that you're trying to promote this to believe that they don't like anything experimental, so you're promoting an experimental treatment. And the reason why you claim that you're promoting this treatment is because you want to radically reduce the chances that somebody ends up in the hospital. You know what else radically reduces the chances of somebody ending up being in the hospital, and that is currently widely available and free? Vaccines. Early treatment with these monoclonal antibodies, Regeneron and others, have proven... So yeah, you have to take a concoction of like these treatments, these monoclonal antibodies. That's assuming you get tested frequently or very quickly. And others have proven radically to reduce the chances that somebody ends up being hospitalized. DeSantis said Monday at a treatment site in Orlando, reducing hospital admissions has got to be top priority. Well, if that's the case, just promote the vaccine. I don't get it. And if you want to keep people from being hospitalized, for those of you who are not eligible, then wear a mask. I love research scientists at Duke U now say optional mask guidelines is like declaring a no pee section in a public pool. Yeah. That's basically what it is. That's exactly what it is. Experts agree that keeping people out of the hospital is a top priority, but vaccines... here we are. And I'm not even an expert. It's just common sense. Because you have to the vaccine isn't a treatment, it's a preventative measure. So ideally, when given the chance to have preventative measures, you take that. I don't get it. Send that to me, Draco. Send that to me in whispers. Florida has over 20,000 cases per day right now. Yeah, that's right. Not treatments for people after they get sick are the best way to do that. The Regeneron drugs, which when given within 10 days of initial symptoms, have been shown to cut rates of hospitalizations and death by roughly 70%. The vaccines authorized for use in the US have proven in large real-world studies to be 95% effective against hospitalization. So, yeah, I mean, like, the numbers are very clear, right? The numbers are very clear. The cost-benefit analysis indicates that, and I know sometimes numbers may be hard, but 95 is indeed bigger than 70. I know. 95 is indeed bigger than 70. It's paywalled? RIP. We definitely need treatments like monoclonal antibodies that can prevent mild disease from progressing into severe disease. Ultimately, it's still best to prevent someone from contracting COVID in the first place. Yeah, no shit, said Dr. Leanna Wen, a public health professor at George Washington University and former Baltimore health commissioner. Monoclonal antibodies are not prevention. No, they're treatments. Texas Governor Greg Abbott tested positive for COVID-19 on Tuesday, and he's receiving Regeneron treatments. Like DeSantis, he has opposed mask mandates in public schools, and he was vaccinated in December. Yeah. So the reason why Mr. Greg Abbott is most likely, overwhelmingly going to be fine is because he's fully vaccinated. In fact, I would argue that he may not even need the Regeneron treatment. Maybe it's because he just wanted to, I guess, promote it. Governor Abbott had a booster, 3 doses totaled. Did he? Is there like confirmation? I know that they recently, I don't know if this is across the board, but I think they're about to, if they haven't already, make recommendations for boosters now for everybody. 8 months after the initial fully vaxxed. So for example, if you had gotten it back in February, it may be recommended to get a booster in towards the end of this year, right? Yeah, 8 months, that's right. So that's what I understand. I'm not sure if they announced it officially as per the CDC, but I have heard that they are seriously considering it, if they haven't already. I'm eligible in December. Nice. They're giving boosters in Detroit now. Yes, I know that in some areas they may have pre-approved it. And I know that currently CDC has said that those who are immunocompromised are heavily recommended to get boosters right now. As far as I understand it, the immunocompromised are highly recommended. Send that to me, Larry. DeSantis has threatened to punish school districts that require masks. He's also opposed vaccine passports and has an ongoing legal battle with Norwegian Cruise Lines, which wants to require passengers to show proof of vaccination. Like, what is the impetus of forcing a company in this manner, right? Like, I don't get it. First of all, Norwegian, the cruise lines aren't just sailing around the US. They sail, I assume, in international waters, which often, well, some countries, especially for example Europe, do require vaccine proof of vaccinations, which we'll get to that in a second. So wouldn't it just be the best to have a blanket, as a company, to have a blanket proof of vaccination policy? Because like you travel internationally. The same thing with airlines. Imagine like the headache that will cause. I think it's just easier for all these companies, especially airlines and cruise lines, to just have blanket proof of vaccination. Simple. Because as soon as you touch down in like international borders, then these countries may require vaccine quote vaccine passports or proof of vaccination. And this isn't like out of the realm of possibility. Ah, here we are. Abbott has told people that he received a third booster dose of a vaccine. So wait, so he didn't even need this Regeneron treatment. He should be more than fine. I think that once you get the third booster, it's especially if you've taken it months after you're fully vaxxed, it should increase or bring you back up to above 80% efficacy. So, 1 second, folks. Except for people with compromised immune systems, boosters have not been authorized by the FDA, although the Biden administration is expected to announce a program to administer them soon. Right, so this is what I understood. Abbott attended a fundraiser in the state Monday evening hosted by the Republican Club at a Heritage Ranch near Dallas. Images and videos posted to social media show an unmasked Abbott chatting with unmasked attendees. Nice meme. I think he may have some reason, I don't know, to be paranoid. No, I doubt that. Larry vaccinated. I really doubt that. According to a law passed in San Francisco in October of that year, on the day that the statewide infections passed 50,000, anyone not seen wearing a gauze face covering was subject to fines that ranged from $5 to $100, which was, I assume, hefty back then. And the possibilities of 10 days imprisonment. Yeah, like all these folks, yeah, don't start any rumors. No, we don't know. Yeah, those who are like crying about like the overreaching authoritarian government trying to mandate masks or vaccines, yeah. I mean, we could do this if they would like. We could just do this if they prefer. Or we can act like adults and do what we need to do. That's simple. Citadel's investment in Regeneron is a tiny fraction of its overall $39 billion in investments, but if the stock prices were to go up, Citadel would benefit. And you know what makes great stock market increases? Promotion of that said treatment, especially if it's a good one. DeSantis spokeswoman Christina Pushaw points out that Citadel has far greater investments in Moderna and Pfizer, which manufacture COVID-19 vaccines. But the relationship has generated a buzz on social media as Democrats questioned the relationship, claiming that there's somehow corruption by promoting the baseless political narrative that Governor DeSantis supports Regeneron over COVID vaccines is completely false, but that's another topic. It's not even logically consistent when you examine the SEC filings. Citadel holds far more shares of Pfizer and Moderna than Regeneron. That's true. But one is being touted and promoted and being I guess speed run throughout the state, right? I mean, he's literally talking about COVID treatment teams that are hitting high impact areas across the state, right? When he could go on a massive public service campaign promoting preventative measures which are more effective. That's the problem. They may hold more shares of Pfizer and Moderna, but one is being way more promoted and used and being touted as a victory by Governor DeSantis as a political prop. Just saying. And while DeSantis has had a very public war of words with Democratic President Joe Biden about requiring masks in school and other virus precautions, they both encourage monoclonal antibody treatments. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. A Regeneron treatment costs more than $1,000 while a vaccine costs about $25. That's interesting. What about boosters with Johnson & Johnson? I don't think that, I don't think that, that's been discussed, Thandera. As far as I can tell, all types of third boosters have been regarding, Moderna and Pfizer. Vaccines prevent serious illness from COVID, but if someone who isn't vaccinated gets COVID or a vaccinated person gets a breakthrough infection, those in risk categories with comorbidity should consider getting early treatment with Regeneron. It is safe, effective, and free of charge to all patients in Florida. This should not be a political issue, it's about saving lives. Yeah, so also, the key is preventative measures are always better and cheaper. A $25 vaccine is cheaper, easier, more effective than the reaction of the treatment, which costs $1,000. This is just common sense, right? Everybody can see $25 is a lot less than $1,000. The federal government is paying for the monoclonal antibody treatments and patients aren't being charged for the antibody cocktail. Again, which is really weird for those who are claiming that they're not taking the vaccine because it's experimental or something like that. Florida has set up treatment sites in Jacksonville, Orlando, Brevard County. The state plans to add more sites. Griffin, a billionaire, has donated tens of millions of dollars to other conservative candidates and political committees across the country. He was raised in Florida and is building an oceanfront mansion, Lamal, near Trump's Palm Beach Mar-a-Lago resort. Nice meme. They're working on J&J boosters. The good news is the J&J jab has more staying power than the rest, less initial protection, but it lasts. We don't know how long yet. Okay. So these are the trade-offs, right? Interesting. And we shift gears to Texas. Texas is facing a tipping point in the state's battle with COVID. Well, I don't know if it's a battle, considering that the governor here has basically allowed it to just run rampant. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who's fully vaccinated, tested positive for COVID this week, and as deaths in his state from the coronavirus have more than doubled in the last 2 weeks, and hospitals have reached capacity. While Abbott suffered a relatively rare breakthrough infection, less than half of the state's total population is vaccinated against the virus, putting them at heavy risk of getting COVID. Right. The massive spikes in cases could also easily climb more, with unvaccinated students across the states returning to school this week amid a battle with Abbott over mask mandates in classes to protect children 12 and under, who have not yet had the option to be vaccinated. The dynamics have put everyone on edge and created a heated political battle between Abbott and Democratic leaders of several urban centers. We are concerned about escalating numbers. Our cases yesterday were higher than our 7-day moving average. Our hospitalization rates higher than our 7-day moving average. ICU higher than our 7-day moving average. So we are still real concerned about the numbers we are seeing. Yeah, I would be too. We do know that the best way and really the only way out of this long term is for people to get vaccinated, so we're doing everything we can to get more and more people vaccinated. Austin is one of a handful of Texas cities that has fought back against Abbott's executive order against mask mandates. The Texas Supreme Court earlier this week issued a temporary order banning mask mandates issued in cities including Dallas and San Antonio. So, I mean, like, what exactly is the point of that, right? Because there's no real logical reasoning behind making an explicit executive order against mask mandates. There's no logical reason to do this, right? You can't simultaneously in the same breath say you don't like top-down governmental overreach, and in the same breath say, you cannot do X, Y, or Z. You are forced. You will not do X, Y, or Z. Instead of just letting the because if the governorship is not going to take any leadership, then the cities and counties will. If Governor Abbott isn't going to lead, the cities and counties have to. So let them choose. Following the ruling, Abbott defended his decision to ban mask mandates, tweeting that the ban doesn't prohibit use of masks. Anyone who wants to wear a mask can do so, including in schools. Yeah, okay. Basically. Nurses with ICU experience can get paid $9,000 a week if they come to Texas. The Texas National Guard is working in the hospitals too. Jesus, that means it's pretty rough then, if that's the case. The CDC considers almost 94% of counties in Texas to have high transmission. Only 8 of the 254 counties don't fall under the agency's recommendation for fully vaccinated people to wear masks indoors. Out of any state, Texas ranks second for both the most adults with confirmed COVID in the hospital and intensive care units, trailing behind, that's right, Florida.
Please clap.
According to data from the Department of Health and Human Services, the Lone Star State narrowly has the most hospitalized children with COVID, with confirmed COVID diagnoses, counting 196 children currently, compared to Florida's 190 pediatric hospitalizations. Yeah. Democrat Mike Collier is running for lieutenant governor, called the COVID situation a nightmare, and blamed the current administration, saying Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick did not motivate residents to get the vaccine. For political reasons only, they let this virus run wild. True. Yep, pretty much. The governor declares a no peeing zone in the pool. Right. Everyone has the choice. Everyone has a personal choice of not peeing in the pool. However, those of you that do not want to pee in the pool can stay over there. But it's rough. A Harris County judge in Houston says if your child is sick with a bad case, they have to quit for some reason. They have to quit for someone to die to get an ICU bed. Yeah, they're running out of space. They have run out of space. There are hospitals at 200% capacity. 200% capacity, so yeah. So for those still spewing the narrative that COVID only affects the elderly, rates of COVID hospitalizations for children and adults under 50 reached their highest levels yet. The pace of COVID hospitalizations is surging across the US, with rates of children and adults under 50 hitting their highest levels yet, according to data from the CDC. Every age group under 50 has surpassed previous records of hospitalizations, which was in the first half of January. The biggest increase was in adults from 30 to 39 and children under 18, both of which were more than 30% more than their previous peak. Aren't those the one that supposedly care about the children? Well, they say they say these things, but nah. That's not good. They're vaccinated. The biggest increase was in adults from 30 to 39 and children under 18, both of which were more than 30% more than their previous peak. The rate for all ages is still below the January high, but at the current pace, an average of more than 11,000 new hospitalizations for COVID-19 over the past week, the US might reach a record high within a month. Nice. I appreciate that, Larry Vaccinated. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. The most at risk for experiencing severe illness and hospitalization are the unvaccinated, according to the experts, yet only 51% of the population is fully vaccinated against the virus. Unbelievable. The alarming surge in cases driven by the more transmissible Delta variant of the coronavirus has been met with pleas from health experts and officials for more people to get vaccinated. It also spurred an often acrimonious debate about mask mandates, especially in schools, as well as growing realization that booster vaccines may be required to address waning efficacy. Yay. The TLDR of this is basically, please listen to the latest CDC guidelines. That's it.
If you're wondering why I'm looking over in this direction, it is because my iPad's over here. Usually my iPad would be what I'm recording with, but I actually just got a camera. Yay! So because of that, you might notice some better quality, but the contrast is that usually I use my iPad specifically for a teleprompter app so that I can just read off the screen. I know I'm very sophisticated, but I can't do that right now because I'm using the tripod for my camera. So I haven't quite figured out how to figure that yet. So until then, I'm just going to be reading off this instead.
You can get a stand for it.
To be honest, my memory's not that great, and there's usually a lot of stats when it comes to these climate recaps, and I just want to make sure that I get everything right.
Correct, Callum.
Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the
Howdy,
Beckysphere, where we talk about climate news and solutions. You've entered the weekly climate recap, where we talk about what is being done to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And this week we are going to talk about what happened from August 12th to 17th. Guys, let's go ahead and get right into this week's news. According to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, July was the hottest month in recorded human history.
True.
And honestly, if we were to look from or talk to anyone from like British Columbia to Italy to Chile, I'm pretty sure everybody would agree that that last month was a doozy. So crazy though, the hottest month in human recorded history.
True.
Bill Gates announced that his climate investment fund, Breakaway Energy, will commit $1.5 billion over the next 3 years to projects being covered in the U.S. infrastructure bill, which still needs to get passed by the House. He plans on coordinating this effort with the Department of Energy. The world's largest steel maker, China Baowu Steel Group, is testing a low-carbon metallurgy technology of hydrogen and recycled gas. Over just 10 days, they already saw a 10% drop in carbon emissions, and they're hoping to get up to a 30% drop. So that potentially could be a very big breakthrough, as steel is one of the most carbon intense industry bits, but also is one of the hardest to decarbonize. So that could be a big thing. The California Energy Commission unanimously approved a proposal that would require builders to include solar panels and battery storage in new commercial structures, including high-rise residential projects. The plan also mandates wiring to be set up in those buildings to accommodate electric appliances rather than natural gas appliances. Needless to say, SoCalGas probably not going to be a very big fan of that. They have been very, very busy lobbying against efforts to move away from natural gas. There's two articles, actually one's a podcast episode and the other's an article, linked in the source section of the description below if you want to learn more about that, but allegedly a little sketchy.
Friday Junior. Hey, Sir Goody, my boss is out, and tomorrow, nice! Today and tomorrow, I've decided to go for my surgery tomorrow, yeet! Well, be sure to check that one out, folks. Hey, Pirate Ninja. That should be a interesting stream. Hey, thank you, Sabercat. Have you watched the low energy Trump video from yesterday? Trump video, yeah, from the majority report is Trump looks like he needed a double espresso enema and prompt cards as he switches to South Korea and does the billions and billions meme. Yes, I was there. I was there.
But the plan still needs to be approved by the state's Building Standards Commission, and if passed, it will come into effect in 2023, beginning of it. Over 90 people have died in wildfires in Algeria.
I didn't even know about this
33 of those who died were soldiers fighting the flames, and there's still 19 flames still active.
There's so much like catastrophes going on, it's hard to keep track. I didn't even know that Algeria was also experiencing these horrible fires.
Interesting is apparently last year 440,000 acres burned in Algeria, which really cements to me how little I hear about Africa when it comes to extreme weather events or just the climate conversation in general.
True.
It definitely was not on my climate recap for 2020 because I didn't know about it. News of the IPCC report dropping actually seemed to get less attention than the 2018 drop, according to
Jesus
a report
Christ.
by Newswhip.
That is so frustrating.
One possible reason why, honestly, is just because we're bombarded by depressing information from the pandemic and because the news headlines for the IPCC report were so scary sounding, rightfully so to some extent, that people probably just didn't want to engage with it.
Maybe, but it's like out of all the out of all times to be disengaged, like this would be the least time to be disengaged when it comes to this. You would think that this is like super important because this is like pivoting. This is like a pivoting moment, right? That one would imagine it would get the coverage and attention it deserves, but unfortunately it did not. On the Richter scale. Yes, the Haitian earthquake, by the way, was absolutely horrifying. Till right now, from what I can understand, it was above 1,200-ish people passed away. And thousands more, I think, are still missing. That's why I get my news from ADT. True. True.
Please clap.
But that's a problem for us because we need people to engage. A new analysis by the ICF Climate Center found that green hydrogen might soon drop in price and become the top hydrogen option. Right now, blue hydrogen is the top option, and blue hydrogen is made as a byproduct from natural gas, whereas green hydrogen is made from processes involving clean energy. So green would be better. The co-author of the study explained why it's significant like this. Quote, green hydrogen is really energy storage and dispatchable electricity. So basically when your solar panel's not generating, wind turbine's not turning, you're going to turn to hydrogen to produce that energy. Kind of like how right now we are turning to fossil fuels. Or nuclear. Or hydropower. This is on the heels.
Sir Yogi, with the 100 biddies. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I didn't know you stream, Sir Yogi. Go check them out, please. I think we went over this. I'm not 100% sure. I think we went over this. But just in case, I did not. Please go follow twitch.tv/SirYogi1. I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Heels of another study that found that the process that makes blue hydrogen emits more carbon than we initially thought. And honestly, are we surprised? Because I feel like we're learning about worser effects of natural gas than in every single day. Like there was the whole natural gas leak in the Gulf of Mexico,
Jesus.
which was completely terrifying. And we're learning more about the effects of fracking in local areas.
Which the reason why it's so hard to like pull like this information or to get a grip of this, I assume, is because these companies are very good at not really being forthcoming, as we've found.
Any other fuel source that's therefore connected to those processes, not going to be that great for the environment. But there is also some positive news coming with the green hydrogen, and this is probably one of the reasons why people are expecting a price drop. In May, Oman announced that it would be building the world's largest green hydrogen plant to run on solar power. And
Nice.
earlier, Japan said that they would be building the largest green hydrogen plant.
Cool.
And now last week, Panasonic announced that it was turning a fuel cell factory into a green hydrogen plant in
Nice.
Japan.
Nice.
So there's some cool projects going on. If you want to learn more about hydrogen power in general, you can click up here to see a video that I did after this video.
Really, the next area to look for is Australia, as they're going into spring and there's already doing COVID shutdowns, and there's fears that the heat dome that affected north of the equator could hit the outback with explosive heat rises. Yikes. Yikes.
Just make it another tab. So first, Turkey was on fire, and now it is being flooded.
What?
Over 77 people have died in extreme
Yikes.
flooding and mudslides, and 47 are still missing. Estimated insured losses have now reached $42 billion for the first half of the year, surpassing the average of $33 billion for this time period in the way of natural disasters, according to the insurance company Swiss Re. This makes
Who is this? This is Becky Sphere. I think they do videos about climate change news. Yeah. They do videos about climate change news. This is a new channel I found that's about climate change. Seems pretty cool. Yeah? Drop the link in chat in case y'all want to check out the full channel.
It's 2021 the second most expensive year for disasters after 2011, which was scary bad. The U.S. declared a water shortage on the Colorado
Yikes, Sir
River for
Yogi.
the first time ever. 40 million people in the U.S. and Mexico rely on the Colorado River as their main drinking water supply. And Lake Mead, which was formed to supply water to Las Vegas via the Hoover Dam being built, is seeing the lowest levels it has seen since 1930s when the dam was built. Due to this declaration, the U.S. government has agreed with Mexico and Native American tribes living by the river to put a Tier 1 water restriction on it. This has kind of been anticipated for a long time, and talks on what different tiers mean had already been discussed in 2019. farmers who are also anticipating this to happen have switched over to less water intensive crops for the most part, though some farmers are trying to mitigate the drop in their allot of water by using the local groundwater, and that can lead to some concerns about how sustainable that will be for how long. Tropical Depression Grace flooded the already decimated country Haiti, which just experienced a 7.2 magnitude earthquake, killing an estimated 1,300 people.
Jesus, 1,300?
Now it's headed for Mexico. And meanwhile, Tropical Depression Fred moved up through Florida and completely flooded it, and now is spinning off tornadoes and
Isn't brown
to
water sewage?
flood
I don't
the
know.
rest of the East Coast. The new artificial intelligence tool Greenwatch parses media statements, websites, and other corporate communications for sustainability claims about 700 global companies, and then compares it to the company's actual carbon footprint to show investors how serious these companies are about keeping their promises. The overseer of the analysis had this to say, quote, "Companies are spinning
1900?
one story after another. If no one
Yikes.
checks them, they will say what they want. And since sustainability is such a broad term, it's easy for companies to create a story that detracts from the real issues." The group's early findings show that 95% of communications companies that they looked at are greenwashing themselves, as well as 80%
Yikes.
of industry and consumer companies. However, less than half of energy companies seem to appear to be greenwashing themselves.
Seem to be
And
appearing.
geographically, Japanese companies have
Yeah, that's a nice meme. I mean, like, we saw that expose on ExxonMobil, that undercover journalist. They admitted that this is what they do. The PR, the front is to say, oh yeah, we support climate change initiatives, reducing our footprint, blah blah blah. But on the back end, they call up Mr. Kingmaker, Joe Manchin, and make sure that certain legislation doesn't pass, or whatever legislations they want gets passed.
had the highest percentage of greenwashed statements, with the US companies being in second place.
Yikes.
Now, as a reminder, greenwashing is basically where a company spends more money on advertising that they are sustainable than they do on actually doing the part to be more sustainable.
Looking at you, ExxonMobil.
You can learn more about their processes and everything by checking out greenwatch.ai. Northern Europe is starting to show their disinterest in cutting emissions. Last week, Switzerland rejected calls for banning fossil fuels by 2050, somehow thinking that they can hit zero emissions while still allowing police, the army, and rescue services to use fossil fuels after 2050. I mean, I guess they're kind of just making it available for the emergency cases. So what do you think about that? Do you think that that's reasonable? Meanwhile,
Press X to doubt? Wait. I don't know. Jesus Christ.
Norway is considering continuing oil exploration. According to a recent poll, 55% of Norwegians want to continue exploring. Norway is the richest country in Scandinavia, basically due to its oil wealth. However, there are some positive signs that this exploration will become unprofitable sooner than we expected, thanks to higher prices suggesting death throes of volatility in the oil industry. So we will see.
I hope so. I mean, like, without governments propping this industry, without governments propping up this industry, I don't see it being something sustainable. Just let it go already. At least Biden isn't sharpening weather maps, I suppose.
After deadly flooding last month, a national campaign has been launched in China to shut down 40,000 dams, which sounds like it would literally be the death of hydropower in China, but most dams are too small to deliver much power, and in some cases they are too drought stricken to be able to do that. And this honestly comes not surprising after a huge frenzy of dam buildings that took place in the early 2000s, and so honestly 40,000 isn't too much. and several didn't even get environmental assessments done before they were built. So basically nature had enough and already started knocking some down. And finally, a new report published in the Environmental Research Letters found that news media coverage of climate change in the US, Australia, the UK, Canada, and New Zealand has hit an accuracy rate of 90% in the last 15 years. Climate change is no longer portrayed as a controversial issue. Finally. Quote,
Wait.
2 decades ago, print media frequently gave equal credence to both legitimate climate experts and outlier climate deniers. But we found in more recent years that the media around the globe actually got it right most of the time.
Oh, that's actually somewhat good news.
The study showed that the only area that still has a lot of bias about the whole issue is in conservative media. The study specifically calls
Is in what? Wait. Is in what?
got it right most of the time. The study showed that the only area that still has a lot of bias about the whole issue is in conservative media. The study specifically calls out Canada's National Post, Australia's Daily Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph, and the UK's Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday for being extremely biased towards the issue in a unproductive direction. I'm guessing they didn't cover Fox News because maybe Fox News is considered more TV news and they were looking more web production. I don't know.
Yeah, I like how she pointed that out. What are conservatives trying to conserve again? Good question.
No, but Fox
Alio
News
with the 10 biddies, thank you so much.
On the list if it was there. I highly recommend checking out the full report, which will be linked in the source section of the description below. And that was the climate recap from August 12th to 17th. Please let me know if there's anything I missed in the comments below, and let me know if you like this style, I guess. If you appreciate the work I do, please consider hitting the subscribe button and checking out my Patreon. So yeah, it's basically the equivalent of, you know, a cup of coffee a month. I mean,
True.
The highest tier is more like Starbucks coffee, but you know. And until next time, remember to talk about the climate every single day and to support your local news organizations. I will see you all next time. Bye.
True. This is great. If you guys want to check out the channel, this is the video that we just watched, and this is the channel. Like, she's basically like just a climate news channel, so that's nice. The Climate Corner, I like that.
From leaving their immediate neighbourhood. Tougher lockdown restrictions for Sydney as COVID-19 cases continued to rise 3 weeks into a city-wide lockdown. The Australian city on Saturday ordered a shutdown of building sites, banned non-essential retail, and threatened fines for employers who make staff come into the office. Authorities in New South Wales state, of which Sydney is the capital, also banned hundreds of thousands of people in the city's western suburbs, the worst affected area, from leaving their immediate neighbourhoods for work. It came as they reported 111 new cases in the previous 24 hours, up from 97 the day before. The state also recorded an additional death, bringing its total to 3 since the start of the year, and 913 nationally since the pandemic began. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian.
We've certainly prevented thousands and thousands of cases, but we haven't managed to quash the curve. And that's why the New South Wales government is taking further action from today.
The city of 5 million people, Australia's largest, has been under lockdown since June 26, with a planned end date of July 30th. That's after an airport transit driver brought the virus into the community and sparked an outbreak of a highly infectious variant, according to the authorities. More than 1,000 people in the city and surrounding districts have since tested positive.
I totally knew I was unmuted. America over here having 700 deaths a day. We can't even enforce a quarter of measures. Why can't we be like the rest of the world? Yeah, well, I think you're asking too much. Yeah, I was muted. Totally professional streamer who mutes themselves and doesn't realize that they have pressed the mute button, but that's okay. It happens. Experts say slashing methane emissions is essential to staving off the worst effects of global warming, with the United Nations calling it the strongest lever we have to slow climate change. This is also mentioned in the latest IPCC report, so he had a new analysis. I heard it's a conspiracy, the CIA muting streamers, true. Experts say slashing... yes. Yet a new analysis of satellite data say fossil fuel companies, which contribute up to half of human-caused methane emissions around the globe, are falling far short of their pledges to eliminate the environmentally destructive hydrocarbon. Wait. Oh. This is naive. Are falling short of their pledges to eliminate environmentally destructive hydrocarbon. It's naive to think that these folks would do it willingly. It's naive to think that, oh, they'll just choose to do it. No. Geofinance Analytics, a satellite data provider, examined the images of oil and gas producing regions in the US and around the world, and for the first time linked methane emissions to specific companies. Interesting. Researchers compared companies to actual methane output with their expected emissions level based on self-reported data and climate plans. The firm then ranked producers on a scale from CC to A, mimicking ratings for financial products, with the worst emitters earning the former grade. Royal Dutch and Chevron were the worst performers according to analysis of the 15 largest oil and gas producers. They were followed by ConocoPhillips, Marathon Oil, and ExxonMobil. No company received better than a middle grade. Jesus Christ. Geofinancial Analytics CEO Mark Criss told CBS Money Watch. All producers scored well below best. Geofinancial's analysis is one of the first attempts to compare fossil fuel companies' promise to cut their methane emissions to the reality on the ground and in the atmosphere. The companies rely on satellite readings and airborne methane concentrations in gas-producing areas in North America, Europe, and Brazil. We cannot take specific action that makes a real difference without specific information about sources, and our data stream and information from emergent satellites is a key new insight, Jessica Hellman, Geofinancial's chief scientist, said in an email. Although satellites can detect many types of greenhouse gases, there's particular power and importance to methane because of its potency and immediacy, and the oil and gas sector, a major methane source with clear ownership and risk parameters. When actual methane emissions were compared to companies' disclosures and climate goals, Chevron and Shell were again rated the worst performers, followed closely by ConocoPhillips and Marathon. Pioneer Natural Resources was the only company among the 15 largest who measured emissions that were similar to its reported emissions, earning a middle grade of B, of a BB, according to Geo Financial Analytics. So they're cooking their books, is what it's what this tells me. Oil and gas producers named in the Geo Financial report questioned the group's methodology while defending their efforts to reduce emissions. Look, I'm sorry, but after that bombshell that dropped with the whole ExxonMobil thing, I'm sorry, but this means nothing. This literally means nothing. Who am I supposed to believe? The overwhelming amount of science and data, or a industry who has repeatedly lied, repeatedly underreported, repeatedly greenwash its image? I don't know. Who am I supposed to believe? Right, close to its quote reported. Right, so they're underreporting. And then we're supposed to say, oh yeah, sure, trust me, bro. That's right, Karl Marx, that's right. The meat and dairy industry is doing the same thing, falsely claiming that they are carbon neutral, right? By definition, they can't be. Like even without having to do the science behind it, which of course just kind of proves the point, but just on its surface, you can't. I don't see how they could be. I don't see how they could be. Right. Sean Comey, a spokesperson for Chevron, responded in an email to CBS Money Watch after a discussion with Geo Financial Analytics. We are concerned that the underlying data and assumptions used in this analysis may not be sufficiently robust to accurately attribute emissions to specific operators or support the generation of a company-by-company ranking for methane emissions in the select basins of North America. Over time, the model and analysis have the potential to improve as additional information becomes available to them. Yeah, I'm sorry. Listen, buddy. Excuse me for not believing you, but I don't believe you. I don't believe a word these people say. Cindy Babsky, a spokesperson for Shell, noted that the energy giants own and operate fewer than 2,000 active wellheads in North America, far less than the number attributed to it in the geofinancial analysis. Shell also pointed out to its use of methane detection technologies, including satellites. Again, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. And methane detection technologies doesn't mean that you're doing anything about it. Wait, you can have all the methane detection technology in the world. That doesn't prevent you from releasing methane. That doesn't prevent you from doing anything about it. Hey BPCL, paragons of honesty, integrity, Chevron, true. Yikes for Yogi. Unbelievable. Irisaima, how's it going? Notice how she doesn't mention the inactive wells, which are the ones leaking the most methane. True. Good point. We disagree with the conclusions made by Geofinancial Analytics, Methane Scan, and take issue with the methodology used to reach these conclusions. Babsky said Shell strongly supports use of satellite data to detect Shell's methane emissions. We use data collected by GHGSat, a high-resolution satellite which monitors greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to other detection technologies based on this data, we are taking aggressive actions to effectively identify and reduce our emissions. Shell remains firmly committed to a methane intensity below 0.2% by 2025. Yeah. Press X to doubt. Press X to doubt. A spokesperson for ConocoPhillips said Geofinancial's data has significant limitations, including attributing emissions to companies based on wellhead density rather than identifying the specific sites from which emission originated, overlooking emissions from facilities such as pipelines. In areas like the Permian Basin, where operators work in close proximity to one another, our experience has been that it's hard for satellites to accurately pinpoint the source of emissions. The benchmark methodology may be only identify which companies have most sites in an area, not necessarily which companies are responsible for emissions. Wait, is this... hold on. Is this seriously an attempt to, like... Okay. In areas like Permian Basin, where operators work in close proximity to one another, our experience has been that it is hard for satellites to accurately pinpoint the source of emissions. The benchmark methodology may be only identifying which companies have the most sites in an area, not necessarily which companies are responsible for the emissions. But if you have the most sites in an area... Wait. If you have the most sites in an area, wouldn't it stand to reason then that you are responsible for the emissions? Wait. I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. One thing I don't like about the left is we're so eager to just say all capitalists and corporations are bad, and we encounter companies like Chevron, Coca-Cola, and Nestle. We just equivocate them with every other capitalist instead of giving them the special attention they deserve for being fucked up even in the mega corporation category. Yes. But the thing is, the reason why we point to capitalism as being a factor to this is because, well, it encourages, in fact, it is incentivized for companies to act in this manner, right? It is incentivizing for this behavior. It just so happens that these companies are the ones are on top, and that's why they would warrant further focusing. But the reality is, the problem is the incentivization to behave in this manner, right? That's the problem. The problem is greed, correct. The real root of all of it is greed. However, I think that the completely off the rails, unchecked systems that we live under, and it is driven by capitalism, incentivizes greed. It does. It incentivizes this behavior, which then leads to companies doing this. It is greed, but it's incentivized. It is heralded, right? I mean, we have Forbes 500. We have Jeff Bezos on the front pages We have dedicated media attention to those folks as the quote good guys, right? This is the epitome of success. This is what you need to be. We don't have to pollute this much. We have ways to mitigate, and we choose not to. Correct. Absolutely. That's right, Pirate Ninja. The system incentivizes not mitigating. It's not profitable. Short term to mitigate. Right. Right. So that's the whole point. Like, the root of the problem really is greed. It is greed. However, I think that having a hyper fixation on capitalism and this unwillingness to maybe consider alternatives have put us in a position where, well, I mean, it incentivizes the root of the problem. It incentivizes greed. So I'm not saying that all of these individuals are bad necessarily, but one thing is for sure. It is not equipped to handle the climate crisis. One thing is for sure. Definitely capitalism is not equipped to handle the climate crisis. That's for sure. Not in this, at least not in this stage. At least not in this state of the game. In this state of the game, by the time we free market our way out of this, it'd be way past too late. Well, you know, God bless the almighty dollar, right? If this is our philosophy, there's no reason why any company shouldn't bribe judges and prosecute activists, monopolize clean water. If this is our philosophy, there's no reason every other company shouldn't bribe judges to prosecute activists or monopolize clean water or hire militias to kill union organizers, right? Well, the things that stop that are laws. The things that stop that are the things that stop that are laws and regulations, right? And in some cases, they do get to bribe politicians, and they do get to bribe even our other systems of government. It is possible, and it has happened where this situation occurs. I'm not saying to essentialize individuals. I'm saying that the system promotes this. Right? I'm not saying that every single individual is, quote, bad. But undeniably, there is a promotion, or I guess incentivization, of greed. Would mitigate those particular heinous examples in addition to the system as a whole. Yeah, so like, undeniably there's problems here, right? We can see, we can poke the holes on where the problems are. And I think that especially with the climate crisis, it is woefully not equipped, ill-equipped. In fact, it is driving it. The laws and regulations of filing and paying the fees is the cost of doing business instead of any real regulation. Right. That's why it's not good. it's not good enough. It has to be outlawed. For example, we were able to outlaw CFCs, chloroform carbons, in aerosols and stuff like that. We just outlawed it completely. We just completely outlawed it. Because of that decision, because of that particular decision, we actually bought ourselves a tiny bit of time because of that decision. Why is this any different? But also, I think since we live in the world we have and not the world we want, we should be broadcasting that these companies are particularly bad. True. I'm not disputing that. We should strive to build the world we want, right? In whatever ways we can, and whatever tools we have, within the time that we have. Yeah, I agree, BPCL. I agree. Right? This is not, I think, a outlandish idea. I don't hate Walmart like I hate Coca-Cola. Well, I guess there's that. Jesus. Kept me personally in poverty for more than a decade. Well, not just you, BPCL. Thousands and thousands of workers, 40% of them live on food stamps despite working full-time. So, yeah. I find that immoral. If you want to prove an alternative, really damn near everyone since Walmart has an effect on expectation of workers outside of Walmart. Yikes. If you want to build an alternative and you want to show that there is something different, you've got to show it. I think that the best way to do it is build it in parallel, right? How interesting would it be if you got, for example, I think Chai Bureaucrat actually brought this up. If we could have federal credit unions prioritize, for example, worker co-ops for the next, I don't know, 5 years. Let's say we roll out a federal program where worker co-ops were prioritized for the next 5 years to get a case study going. What if that case study shows that maybe there is an alternative? That's just one example. Capitalism is going to be around for hundreds of years to come. Unfortunately, we need to do something now. So, like, that being said, I don't know if, like, we would be able to just nanosnap and effectively pivot out of capitalism like that. But there are things that we can do now in terms of the climate crisis, I think. I think there are things that we can do now that will impact severely the climate crisis in a positive way. I think there are things that we can do right now within the tools that we have that will have significant impacts should we choose to have the will to do it, right? And it all comes from a bottom-up movement, I think. Right, yeah, something like that, Darknet. because clearly these are, even to the most average Joe, even to the most I just want to grill, bro, kind of people. Illustrating this can buy us more time. And turn off your computers, go off grid, learn to farm, bro. True. True. Yes, that's right. Enough methane is lost from the Permian Basin in West Texas to power 7 million households every year, making natural gas in some instances far worse for climate than even coal. Yikes. Regulatory bodies have to make polluters pay their true cost. Tragedy of the commons. Yeah, but I don't know, like, if it's a situation where a financial, unless it's like so heavy that it will actually hurt them, it just ends up being a cost of business. That's my problem. I mean, unless there's some like serious financial detriment, it just becomes a cost of business. It's just more, I think, effective to say like, we need to just stop emitting X, Y, and Z, right? Just like we did with CFCs. That's my spicy take. I think decentralizing and like making this commercial farming a thing of the past is important. Our relationship to the planet and each other needs to change. I agree. That's a good point. I agree. I agree. ConocoPhillips said that it also holds itself accountable to the highest standards of operation excellence and that it has reduced methane emissions by 65% since 2015. Yeah. Press X did that. The group on Monday, we're just going to fast forward some of this. The group on Monday sued the Interior Department of Government's refusal to allow oil and gas drilling on federal lands. Wow. You see, you can't say that you're striving to make a commitment to reduce or become more environmentally friendly, and at the same time suing the Interior Department for more permits to allow you to continue to to drill for oil and gas. You can't you can't square these circles, okay? This is like double speak. It's like doublethink. You're simultaneously saying that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we are doing our part in climate change, or doing our part to be reducing our emissions, blah 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 blah. Also, we need to sue the government to allow us to drill for oil and gas. Wait, while also simultaneously saying that you are trying to be carbon neutral or reduce your carbon emissions by 2025 or whatever. These are incompatible. These are incompatible. If something increased costs, either you will reduce pollution or stop your activity. Yeah. Yeah. So that is true. Natural farming is the only way farming, low impact, using native food crops within natural environments instead of monoculture farming, which is what is done. Right, but yes, sure. But Darknet also pointed out that the problem here is this, as you mentioned, this monoculture, commercialized farming, and the fact that we are spending a lot of precious carbon, our carbon balance that is left feeding livestock animals to the tune of 80 billions. Is the cost worth it though? In some cases, the cost of doing one thing is more profitable than not doing it, and the cost becomes just a fee along the way. Right, so the point is, what I was saying is I don't want something to become just the cost of doing business, but I think it should just, we should just make it so that these companies stop producing this. Period. Right. Just like we did CFCs. I don't know why this is so different. And just to end it here, a 2018 study, geofinancial analysis comes on the heels of several studies indicating that the oil and gas sector as a whole may be emitting far more methane than the US government says it does. A 2018 study in Science suggested that the industry's methane footprint was 60% higher than the EPA thought. A study published in Atmospheric Chemistry and Physics in this March concluded, based on satellite data, that the oil and gas industry was emitting twice as much methane as the EPA attributed to the industry. A concurrent study, which combined satellite scans with on-the-ground observations, found that the US methane emissions increased from 2010 to 2017, and the largest contribution came from the oil and gas extraction. Yeah, so there. Why are there billions of hungry people while 75% of agriculture land is used to feed livestock? That is unbelievable. Jesus Christ. Because the market has determined for some that this is profitable. That's what it is. Oof. Cut the military budget and dump it into the war on climate change. Yeah, there you go. Can we sell it at that? Can we sell it to our folks on the right? This is a war on climate change, since they like you know, that type of aggressive language. Can we get some of our friends on the right with that language? Folks, you've seen the war on drugs. You've seen the war on terror. And now, we're experiencing the war on climate change. Yes, that's a yes, but if you tax the production of coke ore-based steel production, you hasten the development, or you pour governmental R&D money into it, and once you have that, you outlaw the previous way of producing steel. There's so many environmentalists saying that we can't feed 8 billion people. It makes me so mad. Yeah, there's no reason why. I mean, there's no reason why I'm watching like photos and videos of metric tons of food being thrown out, and then on the same breath being told that we just can't feed people. No. Uncle Sam wants you to join the Climate Corps. Kick the shit out of the next ice age. Yeah, like I'm at this point, I'll take it, Kyle. I'll take it. Uncle Sam needs you to join the Climate Corps. Yeah. Maybe we'll work on an ad for it. Do it. Yes. Make it into like a kind of like meme format and just start dropping it everywhere. Nice, Sir Yogi. Australian grains which are naturally growing in almost all of Australia using a combination of traditional Aboriginal techniques of farming combined with modern harvesting and processing. The benefits they have found are not only better for us humans nutritionally, but the benefit of the environment, repair and damaged soils. Nice. It's kind of like one of the main reasons why hemp is so good. It helps repair the soil. Yeah, I don't buy the notion, Darknet, that there's just no way we can't feed people. I can't buy that notion when I literally see metric tons of food just being tossed out every day. That's right. Instead of trying to grow corn and soy everywhere. It's inefficient, it's inefficient relocation of resources, Chai Bureaucrat. Instead of, well, maybe we should focus on eating, on feeding people. It goes to redirecting those resources to feed 80 billion livestocks. It's an inefficient diversion of resources. There's 80 billion livestock and people say we can't feed 8 billion humans, right? It just doesn't make sense. That's right. That's right, Callow Marx. That's right. You're absolutely correct. I have been reading about just how instrumental the native the indigenous folks in South America were to working within the land, forming it. Very interesting. No men and firms that nibble around the edges will solve that. The home country will regulate while the capitalists exploit their exploitation and scarcity elsewhere. Yeah, the thing is, I don't see a way where we can Thanos snap our way into like an ideal scenario. I think that the pressing issue is climate change, and the pressing issue is climate change, and I think that the pressure has to be put. No, I'm not saying that either. Yeah, to be fair, the pressure has to be put. Plain and simple. Space dolphins. Alright, it is just about 11 o'clock, so we're gonna take another crack at a couple of these pages. TLDR, these images are horrifying. This is what climate change looks like. This is what failing to act looks like. This is the new norm. The new normal is this is what it's going to look like. That would make sense. Right. This is what climate change looks like. And various frameworks can be used to assess future climate changes and to synthesize knowledge across climate change assessments in Working Group 1, 2, and 3. These frameworks include scenarios, global warming levels, and cumulative CO2 emissions. The latter two offer scenario and path-independent approaches to assess future projections. Additional choices, for instance, with regard to common reference period and to time windows for which changes are assessed, can further help to facilitate integrations across Working Group 1 report across the whole AR6. A core set of 5 scenarios based on the shared socioeconomic pathways are used consistently across this report. These scenarios cover a broader range of greenhouse gases and air pollutant futures than assessed earlier in Working Group 1 reports, and they include high CO2 emission pathways without climate change mitigation as well as new low CO2 emission pathways. In these scenarios, difference in air pollution control and variations in climate change mitigation stringency strongly affect anthropogenic emission projections of the SLCFs. Modeling studies relying on the representative concentration pathways used in AR5 complement the assessment based on SSP scenarios, for example, at the regional scale. A comparison of simulation from CMIP5 using the RCP with SSP-based simulations from CMIP6 show that about half of the increase in simulated warming in CMIP6 versus CMIP5 arise because higher climate sensitivity is more prevalent in CMIP6 model versions. The other half arises from higher radiative forcing in nominally corresponding scenarios with medium confidence. The feasibility or likelihood of individual scenarios is not part of this assessment, which focuses on the climate response to a large range of emission scenarios. As much as I completely understand the motivation behind linking capitalism to climate change, I think there's a danger in linking the survival of the planet and dismantling of a system that people have been attempting to dismantle for centuries. I know I'm an outlier in that position, but I feel like it runs a little too close to dogmatism. I mean, like, it's not the only factor. It's not the only factor. But it is a player in the climate crisis. I think it is a player. And I think that for sure needs to be addressed. Our economy and reorganizing our priorities as to how we handle this need to change. I think it is a player, and I think also it is incapable of addressing it. So therefore, we've got to take measures that don't involve relying on the free market, you know, or don't rely on capitalism. It's going to revolve really a strong approach, the political will to take a strong action against climate change. Period. I think it is a part. I think it is a part. Climate change projections with climate models require information about future emissions or concentration of greenhouse gases, aerosols, ozone-depleting substances, and land use over time. This information can be provided by scenarios which are internally consistent projections of these quantities based on assumption of how socioeconomic systems would evolve over the 21st century. Emissions from natural sources, such as the ocean and the land biosphere, are usually assumed to be constant or to evolve in response to changes in anthropogenic forcings or to projected climate change. Natural forcings, such as past changes in solar irradiance and historical volcanic eruptions, are represented in model simulations covering the historic era. Future simulations assessed in this report account for projected changes in solar irradiance and for the long-term mean background forcing from volcanoes, but not for individual volcanic eruptions. Scenarios have a long history in IPCC as a method for systematically examining possible futures, and allowed to follow the cause-effect chain from anthropogenic emissions to changes in atmospheric concentration to changes in Earth's energy balance. Quote, forcing to changes in global climate and ultimately regional climate and climate impact drivers. The climate change cause and effect chain from anthropogenic emissions to changes in atmospheric concentration to changes in Earth's energy balance to changes in global climate. Yes. I assume that these are the graphs that we were watching, the 5 scenarios. Howdy, howdy. Just news, heat. We have a new insect around here that just started seeing. It's destroying our flora. The spotted lanternfly. Yikes. Yeah, I assume because of the increase of human activity has changed the way the fauna responds, and that includes bugs. Maybe a little bit hard to say in chat. I'm not denying that linkages are obvious. My issue is framing it around we have to dismantle capitalism as ineffective. I don't think it drives people to act. I think it adds to their fears. I think in a planet that was sustainable, there would be still space for a form of capitalism. The message would be more reassuring to help some of them act. Yeah, I mean, like, basically the rhetoric, the narrative is, look, there's undeniably a problem where we have, you don't even have to say the word capitalism, but we have corporations who are prioritizing their short-term profits over our planet. And it's not just going to affect us here. It's not just going to affect certain people. It's going to affect the entire planet. And I think that if you care about your children's future, not some, distant generation, but your children and even your children's children's future, understanding that there's certain companies, about 100 of them, are responsible for this. It needs to be universal to work. Well, yeah, that's true. Hey, Bread Crochet. Well, that is true, because we need a massive plurality of people to put pressure for any of this to work. We need a plurality of people to understand the severity of the issue, regardless. Regardless of what you feel about politics in terms of left or right. Climate change does not care, and I think that there is a necessity for enough people to understand the severity of the issue, to try to get the political will that we need. I think focusing on workers' rights and health is a path that everyone will lead to the same conclusion. Maybe. I still think that that's sort of long-term. We need to find a way to make the environment economically more profitable. Yeah, that's the problem, ain't it? Well, yeah, most people can get on board for workers' rights, but established parties don't give a shit. Yes, but individual folks do. Generally speaking, if you don't talk with a D or R next to you, some progressive positions are pretty popular, especially when it comes to workers' rights and healthcare. I gotta go. Have a good day, everyone. You have a good day. In essence, it requires a social movement that likes the planet has never seen and needs to be inclusive as possible, otherwise it will fall apart. Yeah, I mean, sure. To build that pressure, it requires a plurality of people. And depending on how you speak to people, or depending on who you speak to, will determine how you get them on board, right? But the most important thing is to try to get people to understand the severity of the situation and how the current system is not really equipped to deal with it, right? I think that's important. The uncertainty in climate change projections that results from assessing alternative socioeconomic futures, the so-called scenario uncertainty, is explored through the use of scenario sets. Designed to span a wide range of possible future conditions, these scenarios do not intend to match events actually unfold in the future, then they do not account for impacts of climate change on socioeconomic pathways. Besides scenario uncertainty, climate change projections are also subject to climate response uncertainty, the uncertainty related to our understanding of the key physical processes and structural uncertainties in climate models, and irreducible and intrinsic uncertainties related to internal variability. Depending on the spatial and temporal scales of the projection and on the variable of interest, the relative importance of these different uncertainties may vary substantially. In this report, a core set of 5 scenarios is used to explore climate change over the 21st century and beyond. They are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and span a wide range of radiative forces levels in 2100. Scenarios in AR6 cover a broad range of emission futures and considered in AR5, including high CO2 emission scenarios without climate change mitigation, as well as low CO2 emissions reaching net zero CO2 emissions around mid-century. These SSP scenarios offer unprecedented detail of input data for ESM simulations and allow for a more comprehensive assessment of climate drivers and responses. In particular, because some aspects, such as the temporal evolution of pollutants, emission, or changes in land use and land cover, span a broad range in the SSP scenarios than in the RCP used in AR5. Modeling studies utilize RCP complements the assessment based on SSP scenarios, for example, at the regional scale. Scenario extensions are based on assumptions about the post-200 evolution of emissions or radiative forcing that is independent from modeling of socioeconomic dynamics, which does not extend beyond 2100. To explore specific dimensions such as air pollution or temporary overshoot of a given warming level, scenario variants are used in addition to the core sets. Scenario 1, yes? Wait, are they gonna go down each one? Ah. 1, okay, here we are. Scenario 1. represents low end of future emission pathways leading to warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius in 2100 and limited temperature overshoot over the course of the 21st century. At the opposite end, range SSP5, scenario 5, represent the high warming end of future emission pathways from the literature. SSP3, which is the third one, has overall lower greenhouse gas emissions than SSP5, but for example, CO2 emissions still almost double by 2100 compared to today's levels. Yikes. Scenario 2 represents scenarios with stronger climate change mitigation and thus lower greenhouse gas emissions. Scenario 1 was designed to limit warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. Infographics, yes, this one here, represents a narrative depiction of SSP-related climate futures. No likelihood is attached to the scenarios assessed in this report, and the feasibility of specific scenarios in relation to current trends is best informed by the Working Group 3 contribution to the AR6. In the scenario literature, the plausibility of some scenarios with high CO2 emissions, such as RCP 8.5 or Scenario 5, has been debated in light of recent developments in the energy sector. However, climate projections from these scenarios can still be valuable because the concentration levels reached in Scenario 5 and corresponding simulated climate futures cannot be ruled out. That is because of uncertainty in carbon cycle feedbacks, in which in normally lower emission trajectories can result in projected concentrations that are higher than the central concentration levels typically used to drive model projections. This is going to be addressed in Working Group 3, I imagine. That is the problem. Do we have the time to educate people on specific elements of one ideological person? We have so far not managed to achieve that. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be presented as even necessarily as a we don't have to paint it in an ideological way. It's more of a approach where you attempt to talk to people based on their language and try to make them understand that this is real and the climate crisis is here. And here is what we can do about it, right? Sure. What's under the beanie? I can't reveal that. I'm sorry. How do we do something without educating them to get them on board? Massive public outreach. You have to get communities working together. You have to get communities. You have to be involved in your community. You have to be involved in your community. It is education, I would say. A social movement. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sure. A social movement, right. But a social movement that... A social movement is... that can somehow be designed to focus on climate change. How many hot dogs can you fit in your top of your head mouth? Good question. Infinite hot dogs. The struggle is not easy. The socioeconomic narratives underlying SSP-based scenarios differ in their assumed level of air pollution control. Together with variations in climate change mitigation stringency, this difference strongly affects anthropogenic emission trajectories of SLCFs, some of which are also air pollutants. Scenario 1 and 5 assume strong pollution control, projecting a decline of global emissions of ozone precursors, except methane, of aerosols and most of their precursors in the mid to long term. The reductions due to air pollution controls are further strengthened in scenarios that assume a marked decarbonization, such as Scenario 1 or Scenario P1 1.9 or Scenario P1 2.6. Scenario 2 is a medium pollution control scenario with air pollutant emissions following current trends. Over the 21st century, methane emissions in SSP-based scenarios vary with overall climate change mitigation stringency. Declining rapidly in SP1 and SSP1 2.6, but declining only after 2070 in SSP5. Trajectories span a wider range of air pollutant emissions that are span a wider range of air pollutant emissions than considered in the RCP scenario, reflecting the potential for large regional differences in their assumed pollution policies. Their effects on climate and air pollution are assessed in this box. And people dig in their heels, but climate change has a time limit and it's ticking downwards. I understand climate change definitely has a time limit, that's for sure. Since the RCPs are also labeled by the level of radiative force they reach in 2100, they can in principle be related to the core set of IR6 scenarios. However, the RCP and SSP-based scenarios are not directly comparable. First, the gas-to-gas compositions differ. For example, SSP5 scenario has higher CO2 but lower methane concentrations compared to SRP 8.5. Second, the projected 21st century trajectories may differ even in the result in the same radiative forcing by 2100. Third, overall effective radiative forcing may differ and tends to be higher for the SSP compared to the RCP that share the same nominal stratospheric temperature adjusted radiative forcing level. Comparing the differences between CMIP5 and CMIP6 projections that were driven by RCPs and SS-based scenarios respectively indicates that about half of the difference in simulated warming arises because of higher climate sensitivity being more prevalent in CMIP6 model versions. The remainder arises from higher ERF in nominally corresponding scenarios. Example, RCP 8.5 and SSP 8.5 medium confidence, and see this table. In SSP1 and SSP2, changes in effective radiative forcing also explains about half of the changes in the change of warming, medium confidence. For SSP5, higher climate sensitivity is the primary reason behind the upper end of the SMIP6 projected warming being higher than the RCP 8.5 and CMIP5. Medium confidence. Note that the AR6 uses multiple lines of evidence beyond CMIP6 results to assess global surface temperatures under various scenarios. Earth system models can be driven by anthropogenic CO2 emission-driven runs, in which case atmospheric CO2 concentration is a projected variable, or by prescribed time-varying atmospheric concentration-driven runs. In emissions-driven runs, changes in climate feedback on the carbon cycle and interactively modify the projected CO2 concentration in each ESM, thus adding the uncertainty in the carbon cycle to climate change projections. Concentration-driven simulations are based on a central estimate of carbon cycle feedbacks. The emissions-driven simulations help quantify the role of feedback uncertainty, the difference in the few ESMs for which both emissions and concentration-driven runs were available for the same scenario are small and do not affect the assessment of the global surface temperature projections discussed discussed in the cross-section box. By the end of the 21st century, emission-driven simulations are on average 0.1% cooler than concentration-driven runs, reflecting the general lower CO2 concentration simulated by emission-driven ESMs and a spread about 0.1 degrees Celsius, reflecting the greater range of simulated CO2 concentrations. However, these carbon cycle climate feedbacks do not affect the transient climate response to cumulative CO2 emissions, and their quantifications is crucial for the assessment of remaining carbon budgets consistent with global warming levels simulated by ESM. Ooh. And how resources are used. So time, education, money. So time, education, money, and energy. How best is that? How best is that used to get the things you need? I would certainly have hesitations that fixing climate change requires using those resources to fix a lot of other things around the issue rather than directly on the issue. I could be wrong, but from experience, it tends not to work. Right. So I don't think that I don't think that you're going to I think that you definitely can use climate change as a wedge issue and bring it as a unifying force of what we need to deal with. I mean, there's no option here. How do we empower those people? Lots of things have been tried. Some things work, some things less. So personally, I would say focus. I would say less focus should be put on those people to vote and take part in party politics and move them into local groups, movements. Force pressure that can bring change. That kind of thing seems to work. Latin America, at least with the liberty of democracy experience. Yes. Yeah, sure. I think that's fine. Community building. Yeah. Yeah. The point is we need to get people together on board, and that can put with the plurality of folks on board, put the political pressure that necessary. That's pretty much it. Alright folks, it is about to be 11:30, so I do have to get going. I appreciate all of you guys hanging out here. Yes, education leads to individual change, and individual change leads to systemic change. I think there's some type of pathway like that. I completely think that should be happening regardless. I completely support that. Anyway guys, I do have to get going. I appreciate all of you guys hanging out here. Make sure you join us on Saturday as we have senatorial candidate Josh Weil sit down with us. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to follow. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the YouTubes, join our Discord, all that awesome stuff. I appreciate all of you guys being here. Thank you, Darknet. Thank you, Spread It Forward. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love y'all, and I hope to see you guys in the next stream. See ya. Thank you, Darknet. Leveraging that power is the next step, and each time you got a new, you gain a new layer. True. The point is, use that as we get more people on board. Alright, folks. Let's see. Thanks for the news, buddy. You're welcome. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate that. Alright, we're hitting up Ben because I see a lot of drama going around, so I'm gonna pick Ben. I think he's just sticking to the news. See ya, NMR, for sure. Appreciate that. Good chat's always interesting. Thank you, James Napper, for hanging out. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.